Well, can't remember what day it is now because I quit keeping up with the dates. But here we are, just getting ready to go into Chesapeake Bay. Uh, Chesapeake Bay on a map, when you look at it, you can tell it's a good sized bay. Um, I live in Tampa Bay, so I'm familiar with the bays and everything else. But it was kind of caught me by surprise when I started going through Chesapeake Bay, and made me realize that on the map it looks big. When you're actually in Chesapeake Bay, it's a lot bigger than what the map shows. It's endless water. It took me 4.5 days to go from one end of the Chesapeake Bay, the beginning, which is right here where we're getting ready to go into. And took me 4 days to get all the way up to the top of the Chesapeake Bay and into the channel. Chesapeake City is probably the last city that we run into, which would be in the next video. Also, sorry about the audio on the last video. I recorded that while I was sitting at a park on a bench. Didn't realize that the wind was blowing that hard, but now I know better not to do it again. But anyway, here we are. We're heading out of Norfolk, and you can see there's a container ship right next to me. It's actually just a barge. It's not even a ship. On the side of it is a tugboat that is hooked up to it, and that's the power, and that's how it's moving. The tugboat is actually the one pushing this, and not pushing it, it's actually attached to the side of it. And then behind that is another tugboat. The other tugboat's not even hooked up or anything to the container barge. What it does is that helps them when they need to make a real sharp turn somewhere, or they need help pushing it one way or the other. The boat in the back, the tugboat in the back, can go around anywhere along the barge and literally just push it over to one side or to the other and get it to start turning or whatever they need to do. Right, you can't really see it, but right in front of us is the long bridge, and to the right of it, where the land is right there, that actually is the start of a bridge, and at that point at the end, it actually is a tunnel that goes underneath the Chesapeake Bay. I talked to a couple people about that and asked them, I said, how does this tunnel work, and how does it go underneath the bay? And I said, well, it was built quite a few years back, and it's literally underneath. It sits on the floor, on the ground, and it leaks. They said it leaks a lot. So I don't know, myself thinking, with all that water pressure sitting on that tank, that's got to be kind of serious. But anyway, here we go. Now, as I was coming into the bay, which is right here, and you can see the bridge there, there was about 15 container ships just docked out there. They had their anchors down, and they were just on hold, and they were all lined up in a line. Kind of wondering, wonder what was going on. Why are they all? At first, I thought maybe they were just one following each other, and figuring, hey, if the first guy can get through there, then I can get through there. Until the closer I got, I started realizing I could see the anchors. The anchor chains were down, and they were actually not moving at all. And what it is, just like in Tampa Bay, we also have them there. We also here, they have what they call harbor pilots. These harbor pilots are used to navigating the channel inside Chesapeake Bay. The captains on these ships, because they come from all over the world, some of them are not familiar with the channel, when to start turning, where it gets shallow, where it gets deep, what kind of turn do you need to start doing, and how long before you start doing that turn. Well, a lot of these captains can't do that because they're not doing it all the time. They're basically out in open water, and they pretty much just follow a route that's pretty deep. Um, so what they do is you have to, before you go into the bay, you have to tie up or drop anchor, and a harbor pilot will come out on a smaller boat. He'll board the vessel, and then he'll take over. It's his responsibility. He doesn't actually steer the boat or anything. He just basically tells the whoever's under the helm when to start turning, what kind of speed, and what kind of degrees he has to keep while he's going into the channel. And these pilots, you know, because they do this day in and day out, they know exactly how long they gotta go run before they start having to make a turn at one of the channel markers, or they know when is the shallowest part that they have to be careful and make sure that they don't get out of the channel. If any of these ships get out of the channel, they'll run aground, basically. That's why they use these harbor pilots. Not only that, in Tampa Bay, there was a few years back where a ship came in and it hit one of the pylons on the bridge that was crossing Tampa Bay and caused the bridge to come down. So it's pretty serious. Here, as I was just now entering Chesapeake Bay, it was still morning, and I found out that during the mornings it's not too bad. You can see the boat still moving around a little bit, but it's not bad. The wind is fair. Wakes, maybe a foot, maybe. But anyway, as I got further out and toward noon, it started getting rough. So I decided to go ahead and run into this little cove here and spend the night. Here's where I anchored off. Now, I didn't actually film coming in because it was getting pretty rough, and I was just trying to get out of the rain, and the winds was blowing pretty hard, and the wakes were coming up pretty high. So I was just trying to hurry up and get out of the bay and get into somewhere where it was nice and calm. And as you can see, even though it's pretty bad right now out in the bay, you can see right here in this little cove that I snuck into, it's nice and calm. It's still windy, but it's calm. You're not bouncing around all over the place. And this is what you normally have to do. But you have to, like I do, I follow the coastline. I don't go out in the middle of the bay. Because if you do that, then you're going to have a long ways coming back in. Here it is the next morning. And I'm going to go ahead and picking up the anchor here and taking off and continue my trip. They do normally they don't allow you to tie up or anchor anywhere close to marinas or anything, but this was also a residential area on top of being a marina. So in some areas where there's a residential properties, you can drop anchor in front, alongside their properties, as long as you're on the water. You can't come onto their property, and you have to be, normally a courtesy, you stay 10 feet away from the properties, from the private properties. And by law, you can drop anchor anywhere as long as you're not blocking channels or you're close to a marina. You have to stay a certain distance away from marinas, and you have to stay a certain distance away from mooring balls that the marinas own or anybody owns. So here I am after picking up anchor, and I'll go ahead and going back out to the bay after a nice quiet sleep. Even though it was rough all night long out in the bay, it was pretty smooth here. And that's what you have to do, is you have to watch your weather. You have to be able to hurry up and get into a cove, a river, a creek, anything that would stop the waves and the wind or rain or a storm coming by from catching you out on the bay, because it can get rough. Sometimes it even gets worse out in the bay than it does out in the Atlantic or open water. Because bays are so they're not very, let's say, big, or let's say like the Atlantic Ocean. And a wave coming on the Atlantic Ocean comes from a long ways, and they create high wakes, but they're very far and in between each other. So it's kind of, you're going up and down all day long. On the bay, it's not like that. They're choppy and they're short. So as soon as you're falling off one wake, bam, you're slamming into another one. And you'll see that happening later on in this film here, where I'm basically just bouncing off one wave and hitting another one and just going, all over the place. And that's why it gets rough, because you're constantly being pounded all day long when the wakes are like that. Here I'm still in that little channel, or that little cove that I snuck into, and all of these residential houses on the right side here. I could have just dropped anchor anywhere on the left side, but I kept going as far as I could to try and find me a place that I wouldn't be bothering anybody, or I didn't want to tie up somewhere where there were going to be a lot of boats coming in and out in the morning and causing all kinds of havoc with me being tied up on an anchor and the boat rolling and rocking all over the area by the boats coming in and out. So I did go in pretty far in, but here I am getting toward the end, and as soon as I make this turn here, I'll be back out on the bay. And like I said, this one I think was day 2 of my days on the Chesapeake Bay. Both days so far have been kind of in the mornings. It's okay. It starts off pretty good. Winds are good. Wakes are nice. It somehow, for some reason or another, right around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, the winds start picking up. The waves, you can start seeing what you call white caps on the waves, and that tells you that's not very good. That means they're rolling themselves over, and that means they're getting higher, and that's what you want to try and avoid. So I try to travel as many hours as I can in the morning. It's always a lot easier. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's pretty windy and it's raining or something like that, and you just can't travel in the morning. So you just basically stay the whole day there until it clears up again. Here we are making the turn here, and as soon as we make the turn here, you'll be able to see the bay, and it actually is pretty calm. There's hardly any wind blowing, and the seas, or the wakes out there, are basically flat. You can see the sun as it's coming up now. It's started coming up maybe 45 minutes ago. So I took off just as soon as I could start seeing the daylight. I went ahead and pulled the anchor, had my breakfast, cereal and milk and a banana, and took off. And now here I'm going out on the channel. As soon as I get past the channel, I'm back in the Chesapeake Bay. And again, you start off pretty good, but as the day goes on, as I said, it's gonna get rough. And sometimes it's not raining or anything, it's just a lot of wind and a lot of the wakes. And also, if you're fighting an incoming tide or an outgoing tide, depending on which way you're going, that has a lot to do with it. If you're going with the current, you're going an extra 2 miles an hour, mainly because the wakes or the current is pushing you toward it. When you're going against the wake, obviously you're fighting the wake, and you have to go the other direction that it's going, and you normally will drop about 2 miles per hour. So at average, I average right at about 12 miles per hour. Sometimes I go all the way up to 14 miles if the wind and current is with me. Sometimes I drop down to 10, and it all depends again which direction the wind's going, and the current. Wind and current both have a lot to do with how fast you can travel. But at average 12 miles an hour, and I do that for about 4 hours. Sometimes I have to go 5 hours if I want to get to a particular spot or a marina somewhere. Uh, Now here I am out on the bay, and you can see it's starting to bounce a little bit, but it's still not bad. It's starting off okay. This type of seas I can handle without any problem. It's later on during the day as the winds start to pick up that that you realize, okay, well, now it's getting rough. Time to go in. And as you can see, I stay close to the shoreline for that reason. I don't want to go out. If you look one way to the right, you can't even see land, okay? But there is land out there because the bay is all surrounded by land all the way around it. But it's so big that you can't even see the land on the right side right now. On the left side, you can see it there because I try to stay as close as I can to that without running aground, so that if I have to run into the inward because the weather started picking up, then it only takes me about 30 minutes to get in, find me somewhere. You can see it's starting to drizzle a little bit, and now the boat's rocking a little bit more. You can actually see the wakes now a little bit higher, and you can see the movement of the boat as it going back and forth. The more it moves back and forth, that means the worse the weather is out there. Right now, it's still pretty good, and it's right around, we're talking right about 11 right now. So I'm not doing too bad, and as long as I can travel my 4 hours a day, I'm pretty happy. That gives me enough time to find me a place to stay, decide whether I want to go to a marina, do I want to go stay at a dock somewhere. A lot of public boat docks, boat ramps have docks, and sometimes I'll go in there and tie up. Sometimes they say no overnight. Sometimes they have no overnight. If it says no overnight, I figure, well, if they tell me I have to move, I'll just move. But I can't get a fine or anything for that because it's not posted no overnight stays. And most of the time, your parks do have, most of the parks do have a public restroom also there, which is what I do is I normally go to one of the public restrooms and use the state facilities and tie up at a dock. I've even run up to a beach once or twice and just run it into the beach and stay there and make my lunch or make my dinner and back it off the beach and take off again. So far it's been running pretty good. Haven't had any problems whatsoever. So what I'm going to be doing now is go ahead and start finding me a place in case the weather picks up a little bit more and I have to run into a cove or a park somewhere. I'm ready to head inland somewhere and stay the night and worry about my next trip tomorrow. Here we are the next day, taking off again. I just basically went into a little harbor and just dropped anchor and stayed overnight on anchor. You can see starting off again during the day. This morning the winds are a little bit stronger. You can see the wakes are a little bit bigger, and I'm splashing all over the place as you're bouncing up and down. And again, if you're in the bay and you're bouncing up and down all day long, after a while it gets tiresome. You're just up and down, bouncing, and it kind of takes its toll on you after a while. And you just kind of, well, do I keep going, or do I just go ahead and pull somewhere in, go to shore and just tie up somewhere and just let it go by? But I'm trying to stay on the good days that it's good enough that I can stay out there. I'm trying to get at least my 4 hours in a day. Doing 4 hours a day puts me right at about 40 miles a day. And I've calculated with that, it should take me about 6 months to go ahead and do the whole loop thing, in my opinion. Here I am after the weather started getting a little bit rough, after I started searching, I found this little cove here. And again, it's right around on the other side of that tower there is the bay. So this is just a small little cove I found. I saw it on the map and I thought, well, that looks close enough for me, and it looks like it'd be calm weather. It was still pretty windy there, but that you can see the water was pretty calm. And here I am, and here's some residential property, and like I said, as long as you stay out of the residential areas, don't get too close, you're normally pretty good. This is the next day. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is day 4 again. And it started drizzling as soon as I took off. And as soon as I got out into the open water, you can see how the boat is kind of moving around, and it's going up and down. And you can see the horizon moving. The more the horizon moves, that means the rougher the weather is out there. And it started pretty rough. So I thought, well, as long as it's not to the point where it's slowing me down, as long as I can keep up my RPMs and I can keep my 10-mile-an-hour run, I'm going to keep going. And for the most part, it kind of did that. I was able to keep going without any problems. What I did want to do is I wanted to hurry up and finish the Chesapeake, because, like I said, it was to the point where it was getting pretty rough almost every day, and I just wanted to get out of there. It was interesting, it was nice, but it's definitely the most experienced, or definitely my highlight of the whole trip so far has been Chesapeake Bay. It kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it to be like this. I knew it was a big bay, and I knew I had heard horror stories about it, but I didn't realize that it was going to be this bad. But it got a little bit better as the day went on. Here we are. You can see the wakes are still kind of going up and down pretty good. You can see the boat rocking up and down. Here's an old lighthouse. I found a bunch of these out on the bay, and it looks like somebody's been keeping up with them, because they look like they're well painted and they're well taken care of. I don't know if they were working or not, because I don't come out here at night, so I don't see if they're actually lit up or not. But they do look kind of nice, and there's a bunch of them along the way. So I guess that in the old days, you used to follow these these lights in, and keep you on the channel and stuff. But it got rougher, and I decided to go in, so I found me a marina. Here's where I was kind of sitting when I made that last video, and where all the noise was coming from. But here you can see over by the dumpsters, there's a couple of deer there, and then there's another one almost all the way to the right there. He's eating grass there. And he kind of surprised me, because they were both sitting there. 3 of them, all 3 deers were just sitting around there. And a gentleman that told me, said, there's a lot of deer here that come in and out of the woods at night. Most of them said that they're not really afraid of people anymore. Mainly because, you're so close. And you can see this one deer here, kind of hiding, and then he pops his head up. As soon as I would make a noise or yell out, he would pop his head up just to see where's that noise coming from. And it was kind of interesting. All you have to do is just yell, and then boop, he pops his head up. And he was grazing, and there you go again, popping his head up. But this marina happens to be a fairly large marina. It's an older marina. It's a privately owned marina, and it's an old marina, but it's very large. They own the majority of the property that's here, and it actually goes out into a peninsula, and at the end of the peninsula is where they used to have their fuel pumps. And you didn't even have to come all the way into the marina. You could just go up to the peninsula and tie up there, and you could pick up your fuel there, or you could come in and reserve a slip and stay here. Now, it wasn't bad. The price here was very reasonable. I stayed here about 2 days, mainly because the weather was coming in again. But you can see all this big area all belongs to them. It's a nice park atmosphere. They've even had concerts and stuff out here, they said. And it's mainly open to the public up here. You can't get on the docks or anything unless you have one of your boat owner, or you have your boat there. But it was a nice little marina. And here it's actually the last day of the Chesapeake. When I leave here, I'm actually leaving Chesapeake Bay and going into a little canal that's gonna go, once I get to the end of that little canal, or I start about a quarter of the way into the canal, is a little city called Chesapeake City, which I want to stop off at. And that was pretty good as far as the Chesapeake being over with. It's kind of done and over with. I finished it, and I'm glad I did, and I'm out of it. So my next thing is going to be heading toward Atlantic City, New Jersey. I'm not that far away. Actually, I'm sorry, not Atlantic City. My next change is going to be crossing Delaware Bay. Delaware Bay is about half the size of this bay. Not even, it's even smaller than half the size. And I should be able to cross the bay if weather permitting, everything goes all right. I can do it in a day. Take off early in the morning, and I should be able to cross the whole thing. I'm going through the canal now, and at the end of this canal is where Delaware Bay starts. And as long as I did leave early enough, so I should be able to make it all the way till the end of Delaware Bay. And from there, after that, then it'll be Atlantic City. Delaware Bay comes all the way down to Cape Maine. And at Cape Maine is when you start heading back up north. Because when you cross Delaware Bay, you have to come back south. And then all the way down to the end. And that's Cape May. And then you go back north again. So it's kind of a small little detour, but it's not that big of a deal because, like I said, you can do it in a day. As fast as I travel, I can do it in a day. And most boaters, I think there's a couple of other boats that travel a little bit slower than I did, but they can also do it. When it takes me 4 hours to do something, it normally takes them about 6 hours. So they travel an extra hour or two, and they travel the same distance that I do. There's a cutwater boat now that's got a couple on it, and they travel right at about 8 to 9 miles an hour, where I carry 12 to 13 miles an hour. So I'll be running. I've passed them a couple of times actually, and what it is sometimes I stay longer than they do. I might leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by the time I get up, they're long gone. So they're probably an hour to an hour and a half ahead of me. So I'm the one that's trying to catch up to them. But so far, it's working out nice. Here it is. Like I said, we're leaving Chesapeake. Thank God we're done with, or it's done and over with. So my next stop, like I said, it's going to be Delaware Bay. And that's coming shortly. Actually, I'm just looking at this and I realized I forgot about the stop in Annapolis. I forgot to put that in this film. So I guess I'm going to have to, I'll go ahead and add that onto the next film. Because I really didn't film a whole lot crossing the Delaware. So I guess what I'll do is I'll put the tour of the Annapolis, which is the Naval Academy. That's where they go to training for to make naval officers and Marine Corps officers also go there too. But here we go. Starting to go into, I think this is where we start going into Delaware Bay. And really not a whole lot to talk about. It was pretty nice. It was pretty smooth the whole trip. And I'll go ahead and start the next film here shortly, but this does it for the end of this film, and should be about it. So until next time, we will see you later, and hopefully we should be past Delaware Bay on our next film. Here I am just starting to enter Delaware Bay. I just left the channel that goes across from Chesapeake to Delaware. There's a channel that connects both of them, and it's almost at the end. Well, it is at the end of Chesapeake Bay. So that's it for today, and we'll be posting the next one here shortly. Thank you.